I'm Lori Hoffman with Watertown Albury Community. We promote education and support the Humane Society in their important work. And we are here today to talk about service dogs. We've had so many questions about how do you get a service dog? Do you need one? How is it trained? Where do you go? What to look for as a service dog trainer consumer? And so we sought out Linda Bobot, who is, I feel like she's the most amazing service dog trainer in the area because she has the most comprehensive program. And we are very happy that Linda Bobot accepted our invitation today and that she brought 2 of her veterans and their service dogs with them.
I am Linda Bobot. I'm the executive director and the trainer for Haven, which is Hounds and Vets Empowered Now. And those words are really important because we're not just helping one end of the leash, we're working with both ends of the leash. And the dogs that are here have been trained by the veterans. So I'm teaching veterans to train their own service dog, which is a lot of work. And if you have any questions about what that entails, these 2, Mark with Sadie, they give you those answers. I just want to make it clear that I'm not a veteran, but my father and my brother were Navy veterans, and I can speak from being a family member. So if you have family members as veterans, you may know of what I'm talking about. So what we're doing, there's a lot of questions about how do you do it? Why do you do it? Why do we do it in the way we do? And if you notice the dogs here, they aren't wearing prong collars, they aren't wearing choke chains, harnesses they might use, or leashes attached to their collar. And in the training, we let the dog tell us when they're ready. We are letting them think about what they're doing. And if they respond incorrectly, we do nothing. We don't do anything. But if they respond with the behavior that we are looking for, they get something desirable, something that they want. And in the training process, it's generally food. You know, we have a retriever here, we have a Bernedoodle here. They like treats, they like food, and it's very easy for them to work in the training process. They're getting something immediate. We're using a marker that lets them know that's what I'm looking for, that's what earned the treat. Something that I learned by observing the dogs is they ask questions. They ask questions. And we would often look at that as the dog misbehaving or being stubborn. They're asking questions. And oftentimes it's in the process where they've been responding the way you want, and then they'll do something different, something maybe they worked on yesterday. And when we do nothing, they are learning, oh, it's not this you want, it's what I was doing. Okay, they can walk away. One of the big buzzwords in training now is choice. Being able to make a choice and have control over the learning process. The terminology is important. We are saying cue. I'm giving you a cue. I'm not commanding you. I'm giving you a cue. And what's important about that, it's just like a stage cue. When I say this, I'm expecting a certain behavior from you. My likelihood on getting that behavior in the dog's mind is how well has this worked for me in the past? So we talk about reinforcement. It has to work for the learner. It has to. Otherwise, we don't waste energy. We don't waste energy in doing things that don't work. So we want to build up what's called a reinforcement history. And if we speak about teaching my dog, I want to teach my dog to sit. Well, I would bet money your dog already knows how to sit. What we want to teach them is when I ask for that, that's the behavior that I want. And we identify it by marking it, reinforcing it with food. But food isn't a forever thing. Food is there in the learning process because we don't need to teach them to want food, right? It's a primary reinforcer for all of us. After the behavior is learned in different environments because environments become part of the behavior. I had a very interesting experience with someone one time who was sitting on a couch with a rug over here, and we were doing what's called capturing, which meant when his puppy came over and sat, we marked the behavior, gave the puppy a treat. We got really good where it got to the point where in this setting, he could ask for a sit and his puppy knew what we wanted. So I asked him to go stand 6 feet away. So he moved 6 feet away. His puppy went with him. He looked at his puppy and he said, sit, and the puppy ran over to the spot where the puppy learned it. So we have to take that into account, that environment is part of the behavior. And that's why when we're training, we need to train first in a very low stress environment, makes it easy to learn, which is usually in the home, and then different rooms, maybe driveway, going for a walk, gradually putting more variability in where this behavior is. And again, I've seen it. So today we work a lot on sit. The puppy's really good on sit. Tomorrow we might want to capture when the dog is laying down. We could mark this, and our marker is something the dog can distinguish. It can be a clicker, it can be a word, it can be a sound. Where Winston here would know, oh, I just heard this here. We toss the treat, so he has to come out of it to get the treat. And then we wait. And we just wait for him to do it again. And he's doing that. We're marking it. It's like, oh, it looks like he's getting it. I would bet money that he's going to come back one time and sit. And he's going to ask me a question, is this working right now? When I don't mark it, he can say, oh, that's not what you want. This is what you want on here. And it helps them learn in there. So, and I will tell you, in all of the service dog work here, I have learned the most from watching the dogs, what they're doing, how they're doing it. And because we encourage the dogs to think, figure it out. I have seen the dogs, when we've been in a public setting, be asked to do a behavior, and they might start it, they might start moving into it, but then they'll do something else. And I have learned that if I ask the dog, why did you do that? Why did you do something different? The dog would say, I'm just doing my job. I've seen them move around so they can see the environment better, they can hear it better. Once we were in an environment like this, and unknown person started walking in this direction, and the dog simply stood up and created space. And there's some different thought on actually teaching blocking, like, maybe we shouldn't be doing it. I see the dogs do it on their own. Mm-hmm. They do it on their own, and their field of vision is wider than ours. So they can see more even if they're looking this way or if they're facing this way. So I've learned the question isn't so much it's not why did you disobey? It's why did you do that? Why do I need to know that's what you did? And you can trust it. The downside of everything is the longer the training term, the more the dog is starting to think, wherever you go, I go. You can't leave me behind, And one of the most remarkable stories I heard from a veteran is he had had his dog for a number of years, and he was going to make a quick run out to go do something, and he said, I don't need my dog. I don't need to take my dog. I'm going to leave my dog home. So while he was driving, somebody cut him off. And he just, muttered to himself, and he's like doing all this, being upset about it. But he got home, and later he was just recounting that to his wife, and she said, what time did that happen? And when he gave his wife the time frame, she said his dog was very upset. Even though his dog was not with him, his dog was very upset. He was pacing and whining. So that connection is very strong in there. And again, Mark and Mike can speak to that. So anything that you would like to share?
Yeah, Winston, he'll be 3 years old in June, and he has learned that he's tied to my hip, literally and figuratively. He goes everywhere with me. He goes on all my meetings. I'm involved in a lot of groups that have meetings, and you can see he's really well behaved during meetings. He taught himself that. I don't have to even say, lay down and relax. However, he goes to the medical appointments. All my doctors have no problem with Winston coming to my medical appointments, dental appointments, vision appointments, hearing appointments, wound care appointments, mental health appointments. They all expect Winston to be with me, and if he's not, they're suspicious about, where's Winston?
Not that we're not happy to see you, but
Yeah, in fact,
where's your dog?
the
I know, buddy.
the ladies that work at the dental clinic in Milwaukee, they know Sadie and Mark and Winston and I, and if we show up without our dogs, they don't want to treat us because our dogs' pictures are actually up on their walls at the dental clinic. But after a while with the service dog, with the closeness and companionship, I call him my battle buddy. It's a military term, battle buddy. It's in basic training. You always got assigned a battle buddy that you would watch his or her back, and they'd have to watch your back, and then you go in a battle, and that's the same premise. But in the setting with the service dog, you can tell what they're thinking. It's almost like having a little human buddy, because you can tell when they're upset. They can tell when you're upset. They can tell when you have to go someplace because they're already at the door waiting for you, because they're saying like, "Where are we going?" And like today, I said, "We're going to Watertown." They go, "Oh, we haven't been to Watertown before. Well, let's go and sniff around Watertown." But it's amazing. It's amazing how insightful they are. When we go to training, he knows we're going to training. When we're going to the airport, War Memorial, he knows exactly where we're going. And he knows what kind of mood I'm in. I have a wife that hopefully she's not going to see the state. When we have a little disagreement, he's upset. He's upset because we're disagreeing about something.
So how has training your own service dog with Linda's help affected you? How does that change your life?
This is my second dog. My other dog, Sydney, died of a seizure. He was also a trained service dog with Linda. And when Sydney passed away, I had major medical problems at the time. I had open heart surgery, so I had to wait like a year and a half, and I had to convince my wife that we're getting another puppy, because she knew that the second we got another service dog that she'd be like pushed back a little bit. The training, when you go to group training, you develop relationships with the veterans, which is very important because most of the veterans have non-physical issues. You know, things that they may not talk about in other settings, but they'll talk about in a training session. And when you go to a training session with veterans, and you go home and you have homework. You know, Linda kind of sets up, you know, this is your task for this portion, this week, this month, and you go home, and if you don't practice it with your companion at home, it's obvious when you come back. It's almost like getting a bad report card, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like I say.
And dogs can't lie.
No.
Dogs,
No. But I would always say, you can tell me you did your homework, but your dog is going to tell me the truth. So.
Right. So it's important. You know, it develops. It's like a total commitment. Your dog has to have it towards you, and you have to have it towards your dog, because they understand. And you're responsible for everything. You're responsible for their feeding, their watering, their grooming. If it's a dog that's got to be cut every 8 weeks.
That wasn't me.
And you know, you have, you know, taking exercise walks and play, right? Your dog has time to play. And drop a ball on your head when you're laying on the floor. You
And then
know?
you get it.
Right.
But that's an important part too in the service dog world. These are still dogs. You know, nobody wants to be on the call 24/7. Nobody wants it. So even though at home they're not wearing their vest, they still are in tune to what's going on. You know, they're so in tune. And one of the interesting things, when I first got into service dog training, if you brought up seizure alert dog, you didn't say seizure alert training, because it wasn't believed you could train a dog to do that. That some dogs did it naturally and others didn't. They have found that because dogs have that powerful sense of smell, if someone isn't going to be dealing with a seizure that's starting to build, their scent is changing. And the dogs are picking it up. They're picking it up for diabetes alert. They're picking it up for migraines. They're picking up change of heart rate for someone who has heart concerns. So they are picking up much more from us. They're picking up body language. You know, if somebody, somebody told, this was a while ago, but just told me that before she would have, if her anxiety was starting to build, her first sign was she'd start biting her fingernails. And so we would use that. We would teach the dog that's a cue for a behavior. It's a cue for interrupt something, that we have to move, we have to do something else. So another, I do this. That was the cue for coming up lap or giving a hug or doing something like that. Or reading by their native language. They speak it whether they're looking at another dog or looking at a human. They do. They're up those indicators that something. So, yeah.
And not all dogs and not all owners make it through the program, because it's a big commitment. And I noticed just in our training group that you notice a change in the dogs, but you also notice a change in the veteran, right?
Right.
So what kind of change?
And Mark, maybe you could talk about somebody in our group right now that, without using a name.
We have one person that's really anxious. Let's say and the dog does really well with the person and licks their hand, nudges them when she knows they need to change or need to do something different. Very in tune with the owner, and it's great. Hey, come over here. Go over here. And then Sadie, she takes a real good care of me. I feel bad leaving the house without her because she knows that I'm putting my shorts on or putting my pants on. We're going somewhere, or at least I am. But she knows she's waiting. Down. And so she wants to be there with me and always be by my side and taking care of me and watching me.
Well, that gets down to that, where you go, I go.
Yeah, and I feel bad leaving her because I didn't want to get in a car accident with her at home.
Oh.
You know. And so I had somebody that we were going out, and she says, "You taking the dog?" Yeah. You don't want that? We're not going out. You know.
But, yeah.
Because she's a big part of my life. Hey.
But that brings out something, because Mike, you said it too, and now you said it, that when you're going to bring a service dog into your life, there are other people who are affected. There's an effect there. And if that other person has any type of a caretaking personality, which I think that's your wife,
Yeah.
right? On there, that they feel like they don't matter anymore. That, you know, or there's somebody else getting that you're thinking about first. So in that respect, and I think that's more if there's a dog. If there's children in the family, if they're, let's say if they're like at least 5 years old and up, they can be real in training. So you can bring them in. Their timing will be pretty accurate. You can involve younger too, but you make them part of a process. And I remember a vet I worked with quite a long time ago. He and his wife, at that time, I think they had 4 children, and he spent his time in the basement, and his wife did everything outside of the house with the kids, which is, you know, is a lot. And over time, he started venturing out more with his dog. And he sent me a photo where he was at, I don't know if it was a baseball, on his, and after there, do something like a CVS or Greens. And he said, I just moved over to the side with my dog. And he said, I realized if I focus on my dog, nothing around me matters on there. So it's a focal point. And our Mike said, dogs don't lie. If they tell you it's okay, you believe that better than the person standing next to you telling you it's okay. You know, if they tell you, you know what, I'm getting a little concerned with that, you look at where that is and maybe you want to go a different direction in there. So I think they make that much easier, right?
Oh, definitely. It takes a while to train them. It took about 1.5 years to get her trained, but she's doing really well right now, other than this. Sure, make me a liar.
On here, so, and
No.
and Mike and Mark can both also tell you about what it means to be out in public, where now you are the focus of attention, because we are so drawn to looking at dogs in there. One thing, if anybody here has any business connections, Mark has encountered this, I don't know that Mike did, but they want you to produce documentation that your dog is a service dog on there, which the federal law does not require. The federal law does not have a requirement for registration, for certification. These two teams are certified, but with Haven. It's a local record, training history, it's with Haven. It doesn't go to the federal government. And if you've ever looked up anything online for service dogs, you see the websites. Register your dog here. which you don't need to do that. If a team goes into a place of business, if there's any concern about the dog's behavior or any question, a business owner can ask, is this your service dog? What does your dog do for you? Which is kind of a funny line because you don't have to disclose your need, but you have to disclose something in there. And that should end the conversation right there. Even a trained dog, if they're misbehaving, if they're eliminating, yes, you should leave. There's too much stress for the dog, something's going on. Yes, you should leave. But other than that, that's as far as the federal law goes with it. They don't say you have to have a term of training. They don't say that. They need to be able to do one task that is the benefit of the individual with a disability. That's all it requires. I think some individuals, once they've got one task in there, they want to do more. You learn there's much more. Worked with a woman again years ago. It was a hearing alert dog, and she was comfortable. She didn't think she needed the dog, but somebody got this little terrier for her, and we started working on the training. And about a year into training, she started realizing, I'm not going to have my dog forever. So she jokingly said, can I clone my dog? Because once you have the dog, you start thinking about, what do I do when I don't have the dog in there? So, and really, she realized it was a benefit to her in there. You do run into situations where somebody's afraid of a dog, right?
Yep. I was getting on an elevator at the VA, and before I get on the elevator now, I ask, does anybody mind the dog coming on? Because I know there's a lot of people out there that are allergic to dogs, and some are deathly allergic to dogs. I didn't realize how allergic they could be. But I got on, I was getting ready to get on, this guy goes, does she bite? I says, I'll take the next elevator.
Right.
No, she doesn't. I wasn't going to answer the question. I just said, no, I'll take the next elevator. No big deal. Hey, quiet.
On there. Sadie wants to speak.
Yeah,
she could tell you a lot.
She may want to go up. I don't know how to get out of here.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
Can you take
do
her
we
up?
have any questions from the audience?
What are some of the disabilities and some of the things that the dog does specifically for veterans? Yeah, what are some of the issues? that
Mike's not on, I
dogs
don't
do
think,
for
is it?
veterans?
For us
Yeah.
specifically?
PTSD.
A typical list. What are
Like
some
an
of the-
example.
Now we found, especially after Afghanistan and Iraq, and for the veterans that are still zipping around from Vietnam, that there's a lot of emotional issues that are coming to the forefront, and they're being treated for PTSD issues. And the dog is a common effect, calming effect, I should say, for most of the veterans. It's a companion. The one veteran I was referring to before in our training class was afraid to even leave their home before they had a dog, and now the dog's forcing them to leave the home, and the veteran's now becoming more acceptable as far as going into places where other people are present. Loud noises, startling effects, crowds of people, all things that a lot of us take for granted. If you were traumatized as a veteran, sometimes fireworks or even thunderstorms can set you off. So a lot of the dogs are for mental health issues. Winston specifically, I am 50% blind. Lost one of my eyes, and he helps me keep away from bouncing off of walls, which is nice, because, you know, I don't want to be picked up for drunk walking.
In there.
And so, yeah, Winston keeps me off the walls, keeps me from bumping into people. Forms, and Linda was talking about the barrier, just going up to like a cashier or something, and you don't want to have someone sneaking up behind you. The dog will set up a barrier, automatic barrier, where there's, you know, that 3-foot distance between you and someone behind you. Mark, what other kind of stuff can you think of offhand?
Well, they help with anxiety, they help you calm down, and they comfort you and cuddle you. She helps me to sleep at night. I used to have a real bad time of sleeping at night, and now I sleep well through the night, other than getting up to do the typical thing you gotta do every night. But she does really good at cuddling right up and comfort me to sleep.
One of the things, anybody can have a dog and say, you know, my dog just does this and it makes me feel better. That's not defined as a trained task. It has to be something trained. So deep pressure, anything with coming up on the lap, or with the bigger dogs, standing up and hugging, putting pressure on is one thing. Retrieving, sometimes just going retrieving if for some reason the individual needs a phone, but the phone's not there. One of the biggest things, and this one isn't a trained behavior, but I think it's helpful, is the nightmares, is waking up. And if your dog is peacefully laying there, it's a nightmare, it's not real, okay? Dogs can be turned from the body, they can be trained to interpret the body language that might be going on in a dream as a cue to go turn on a light, tap on a light, bring light in there. There are many things that they can be trained to do. The biggest thing for the individual is helping them feel safe. You know, again, if the thing looks peaceful, okay. And I had a young dog that lived with me for a year, and I actually was working on her training at Menards or something. And those are great training in there, because there's so many sights, there's so many sounds, there's wide aisles, things are moving, but I think they're a comfortable place. So I was walking, going down the hallway, and we were 2/3 of the way down, and she turned and looked because somebody was entering the aisle we were walking on, and she saw where this individual was and continued to move. I've seen her do it in another situation where she turned around and she stayed looking around, and that was somebody who was approaching us coming up on that side. So dogs have a bigger personal space field than we do, and they see more. So they can say if something's coming up close on back here, they're going to let you know. You know, and they're going to let you know before they're close enough to tap you on the shoulder. So, so that one is a big one. Going to get help if somebody has fallen, to go get somebody, go find them, or go get the phone, go get the medication. I've heard somewhat with some medications, it's difficult to get up, to wake up. The dog that was placed with a veteran that I had, that was his situation. So in clicker training, the dog knows when I hear a click, it means I'm going to get a treat. We taught the dog when you hear the alarm, that means you're going to get a treat. The treats, though, are going to be in a place where the individual has to get up. So the dog will come nudge them, and they have to get up to go get the treat in there. So there's a lot. There's a wonderful website. If you want to learn more about this, it's for the National Association of Assistant Dog Partners, and IAADP.org. They have pages dogs can be trained for what is called the psychiatric service dog. So there's a lot there. For diabetes, it's alerting, hey, you might want to check your blood level.
You're getting a low, she can sense that.
On there. And oftentimes people have had dogs that had started alerting for something, and they thought the dog was misbehaving because the dog was jumping on them, or somebody once said my dog would go and get every single toy they have and bring it to me. A woman I worked with briefly, her son had POTS, which is a heart-related. She didn't know for 6 years that her dog was coming and telling her that her son had fainted, passed out. She thought her dog was saying he needed to go outside. And somebody else pointed that, no, your dog is telling you you need to go help him. Hearing alert, that's pretty obvious of where the sound is coming from. We don't do anything with guide dog training. That is a much more serious work to be doing. But there's a lot of things the dogs are so we've known for a long time that why our dogs are so happy to work for that treat and thing, or even their food, is we as mammals get more satisfaction out of working for something than it being given to us free at no cost, because we know how to get more, right? And it's called contra fee feeding, that if there's a bowl of treats over here, but I've been trained to hit something and the treat comes to me, unless I'm starving, I will choose this. And they found it in squirrels, they found it in other animals. There's that sense of knowing how I can get more. Like a lottery winner gets a big sum of money just given to them. That's not as good as being able to earn money, that you can do it again. So it enriches the dog's lives, really much more, being trained to do these things and then going out in that role. So,
how does it enrich the veteran's life to train their own dog?
You build a bond with your dog
You do.
right from the beginning. You're there with them all the time.
from day one.
You're learning what they are going through, and they're learning what you're going through. She trains me a lot. I mean, she gets me up to go take her for a walk. We usually go to the mall because I had a knee scooter, and that was a lot easier to run in the mall than to run on the sidewalks that are, bumping all over the place. Quiet. So she loves the mall. We have friends at the mall that have to say hi to her every day when we go down there. It's quiet.
Which
And she makes their day.
Yeah, which that leads me to another big issue with service dogs. I love dogs. Can I pet your dog, right? And what we talk about here is petting is acceptable only when they're not wearing a vest, okay? Because for social dogs, they get a lot out of interacting with other people, right? So sometimes someone with a service dog, they'll get everything through, they'll get that accomplished, and then they'll go be dog, so that I can take off my dog's vest, we can go through what we need to do, and we can actually go visit. We do there. But one thing that I want to bring up, it's the terminology has really changed because we are looking more at the effect of what we have on animals, what humans have on animals. And we would always very easily say, well, I'm using a service dog, I'm using a therapy dog. The terminology has changed to I'm working with a therapy dog, I'm working with a service dog, because we're regarding that they have emotional states, right? And if we look at it, they're basically captive animals. If we look at it, they're captive in our house, in our lives. So what we are looking for is giving them that term agency, that they have it too. And we take that into account in training. But this is a book. It's a newer book that I've gotten. But it's called Transforming Trauma, Resilience and Healing Through our connection with animals. And I think that's for veterans and for a lot of people. If you don't have strong connections with people anymore because you're not the person they knew before, right? You can make that connection with a dog. And I think we have something in us that if my dog tells me I'm okay, I'm okay. You know, that's why I think we trust too. If our dog doesn't like somebody, that's information for us, right? For whatever. But this is great because it deals with trauma, childhood trauma, veteran trauma, and crisis responders trauma. And they have very similar benefits when they're talking about animals that they're working with, but that huge one is connection. Because we know loneliness is not a cure for most things, right? So.
I'm still connected with the law enforcement community as Linda is, and you'll notice that more and more police departments are getting animals that are used to work with the police officers after traumatic events. Hospitals are getting dogs. Funeral homes are getting dogs.
Firefighters,
Yeah.
firefighters, first responders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's because, you know, people don't always want to share their thoughts and their feelings with another person right away, but they'll sit down with an animal and share their feelings.
There's one of the first books I read about dogs being in a professional setting. Dr. Aubrey Fine has written a lot on, he's a child psychologist. And so he just accidentally saw when his dogs start walking in the room with the kids he was working with, the changes in there. And psychologists, child psychologists, I found out they will tell the dog more, the child will tell more to the dog than to me. And so in his book, he had the account of a young boy who was, he just couldn't sit still. He was always causing problems at home, that he whispered to the dog, "It's really hard being me." And he heard that, so he could use that. Children who have just stopped talking. You know, he worked with a young girl there. She came back to see him when she was in college or something, and she said, "It's really interesting that a dog who couldn't speak taught me to speak in there." You know, so there, it's an, and I'm going to tell you how I really look at this. There's lots of folklore about how humans and dogs came to be. And one of them is that there came a time where humans were all grouped together and the animals were grouped together. And a crack started forming. And it was getting wider and wider and wider. And finally it got to the point where it's almost too wide, and the dog is the only one that leaped over. So, but my favorite is, this was from a Native American tribe in California, that when God was creating the world, God walked along and put the pillars up to separate the sky from the earth. And as God walked, God drug his feet. That was creating the rivers, that was going to go into the oceans. And placing the animals in different parts of the world, different animals in different parts of the world. But nowhere did they say where he placed the dog. Because as he was going and creating this world, his dog was walking with him. And I think it says it right there, that the dog has always been with us, the dog should always be with us, but we need to treat the dog differently than we often did in the past in there. So,
Any more questions?
and you know, the thing for when we're working, say with veterans or any individual who has a need for a service dog, we want there to be a provider, a medical provider, clinician, who is working, especially for anything mental health, the dog, I always say, the dog is not going to cure anything. The dog is not going to fix anything. The dog just opens up something here, in here. But this needs to be done along with there being treatment from a provider to monitor that. And I think from some of the providers that I know, they can speak of what they see as a change, you know, as a change. I think a very basic, something very basic, there was a veteran, and I knew his provider, and everybody knew we knew each other. And so I had a picture from the veteran when he got his puppy, and he's holding his puppy. And so I sent it to the provider, and simple sentence came back: "That is the first time I've seen him smile." The puppy, you know, on there. So they're very powerful. A lot of going on.
Thank you so much
Oh, you're
for
welcome.
coming and sharing who you are and who your dogs are and how you know your journey has been. One last question for you: did either of you have dogs before you got your service dogs?
I did.
You did.
Yeah.
You did.
I
So
had dogs before, but not service dogs.
okay. And what's the difference between you had the dogs before and your relationship with your dog now?
There's a closeness now with her because she takes care of me. She looks out for me. My other dogs did too, I believe, but we just built this relationship that's so close that she's my daughter. She's not a dog.
Yeah,
A family member. She's a family member.
my two previous dogs were like family pets.
Yeah, I love my dogs, but
Family pets. And, Winston's like a battle buddy. You know, he's like arm length away.
He's got a mission.
He does, yeah.
Yeah.
I know we're probably
You know-
gonna take you out.
Do I have time for one more thing?
I think so.
Okay, I'll make this really quick. So there was a veteran who, again, this was years ago. He didn't live in Milwaukee. He was outside of Milwaukee, and I received an email, and he said, you know, it's been 3 years. My wife says I need a dog. My provider says I need a dog, so I guess maybe I need a dog. So, so we were going to go look at the shelter, and I said, just let me know the first day that you want to go look. So he said, okay, this is the day. So I met him there, and he first zoomed in on one dog, and the dog had a sign on there, not available for adoption. So the adoption counselor went to check. She said, I don't know why. I don't know why this is, but I guess we have to look somewhere else. So he said, well, I was looking at this other dog, which was like a chocolate lab. And so we went in there, and it seemed like the dog was going to be a good fit for him. So he was doing the paperwork, and I said to his wife, you know, that dog is 3 years old. And when her husband sent me that email, he had been thinking about it for 3 years. I said, that's really kind of interesting. So he told me one day he was just sitting, and his dog was laying on the floor. And he said, you know, it was like my dog was having a PTSD nightmare. You know, and he said, I wonder if my dog has PTSD. And then he said the dog turned around, and there was just something different about the dog's eyes. But we couldn't come up with anything that would be harmful in that dog's history, because the dog had been a surrender in Tennessee. The dog was surrendered and came up. So it turned out that we were there the first day the dog was there. We were like the first person this dog saw. And we were commenting on it, and he goes, that's not the only thing. They had the information from the person who owned the dog, who had the dog those 3 years. He said, yeah, 3 years, but he looked and he said, this dog was born on the day I got my diagnosis for PTSD. You know, and he made me wonder, when that was going on with his dog, if that wasn't something with the energy fields the dog was
The connection.
making, the energy, taking in the energy and going from there. It's going to be forever one of my most memorable stories. And so he ended up moving to Florida, and he said, we got into Tennessee, and my dogs started getting kind of, whining, and he said, "It's okay, buddy, we're just passing through," So there's a lot more going on here. In there,
They
so.
all have histories. And we don't always know what that is.
Right.
Do you often get dogs from shelters?
Most of the dogs. Okay, so here's this. It's a lot of times the veterans contacting us and they already have dogs. So sometimes they've gotten the dog from the shelter in there. Some of them from breeders on there. But one of the difficulties with going into a shelter and adopting that day, you're not really seeing the real dog because they've gone through a lot of things where they lost control. They lost it. So it takes a while for them, and sometimes there's a level of anxiety with the dog. So, but they can be found there. What I think is a good resource is the shelter's fosters. Because the dogs live with somebody,
Right.
that's the resource right
They
there.
take time to
They take
decompress
time.
outside the shelter.
Right. And they can see how, we want the dog who is, right, good around other dogs. Doesn't have to be total play with every dog I see, but okay with other with other dogs in there. And the big thing is, does the dog want the job? Does the dog want the job? So we can look at people. There can be people who like to go out in crowds, do things, find friends everywhere. Other people say, you know what, I think I'll stay home and read my book. I think dogs can be like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of my 3 dogs, each one has their own
They're different.
personality, and
Yeah.
I've got a homebody and
Yes, yeah.
one that wants to be involved in everything,
Right.
and they're very different.
They're very different.
Yeah.
And they view the world from a different perspective. So we want the dog who says, sign me up. So, and we are looking right now. We're doing owner training, but we are looking at actually, hopefully, getting veterans involved who wish to train a dog for another veteran. So we might go more with limited mobility, or maybe someone whose PTSD is so intense that this would be difficult. So we want to start actually training dogs also. So
And Haven's looking for a home.
Haven needs a home.
We're looking for
A true haven.
So what would that look like?
Maybe more rural, something rural where,
I think Watertown be nice.
Watertown's a great place, I'm
Yeah.
here to tell you.
yeah,
It's a little ways up from Milwaukee, but
Yeah.
but it's,
Yeah.
but something where maybe we
Right.
could house dogs that we were involved with training, we could do retreats, we could do special events. And I have found the more veterans have other veterans to talk to, the more their comfort level increases. And and something too, we want to think about this before. There's a lot of focus now. Well, it had always been on the mental health of the learner, no matter what species, the mental health of the learner. Now it's the mental health of the trainer. And it goes very simply. Being kind makes us feel better than if we have to be the one jerking the leash or doing.
Yeah, I found, because I went from aversive training, which is the traditional,
Right.
to force-free training, which is science-based force-free training,
Science-based.
which is the
Science-based,
kind that
right.
you guys do.
Right.
And I found a change in me as where I relate to people. When someone does something that I feel is, rude or hurtful, I stop and I think about what caused that,
Right.
and how can I help. So, and I never, you have it up here, but when you practice that every day with your dogs,
Right.
it's muscle memory,
It's muscle-
and there's more understanding there.
Right.
Yeah.
in October, I was at a conference, and all these dog trainers, we all think we're all alike. We're all dog trainers, same mindset, things like that. And there was a presenter up there was doing a session on burnout. He took on too much in his dog training, and he was, had issues with that. So now they have this where he'll put up a QR code and you can scan it. And he'd ask a question, and he said, you can put your answers here, and they'll appear on the screen. So here is maybe over 100 dog trainers, maybe more in this room. And he said, how many of you have experienced a trauma? And what was in the past year, and what was that trauma? And that thing lit up with so many things that I thought, sitting here in this room, I would never think that, And then he said, well, how many in 10 years? Again, it all lit up. People are dealing with a lot of stuff, and we don't know it.
Right.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know what's going on. So, yeah, on there.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you to Watertown TV for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to share. Yeah.
Woohoo!
Very good.
Thank you so
Good
much.
job,
Very
Winston.
You guys are great.
Yeah,
You're taking after your brother, Sydney.
really, Sydney.